Thanks, everybody. We're back online now. And now we're looking at a workshop on freedom camping in Bylaw. Okay, Simon, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Worship and Councillors. A topic that always creates a little controversy. Obviously, here since it was incorporated as a new act several years ago, it's caused some derision between community, businesses, and I dare say our tourists as well. So we're applied by law, obviously have a freedom camping bylaw. Ours is a little bit, it hasn't been reviewed since the legislation has changed. So it needs to be updated, hence the reason it's the first off the rank, excuse the pun again, for review in terms of our bylaws. I'll hand it over to Bron to take you through a presentation. Just like I said, ask questions on the way through, so we can just cover them off as we go. Thank you.
So, as Simon said, we are looking at the review of the Freedom Camping Bylaw, which was established first in 2011 and was reviewed in 2018. And since that time, the legislation has been updated and changed. This is really meant to just inform and familiarise you with the issues that we're going to be needing to address as a council in the review of the bylaw. And we don't have any answers yet, but we will be bringing you further information and further we'll discuss the issues at another workshop before we bring you the actual draft. So why do we need a bylaw? Basically because of legislation. We have the Freedom Camping Act 2011, which was when it was first brought in. We have the Self-Contained Motor Vehicles Legislation Act 2023. We have Plumbers, Gas Fitters and Drain Layers Act 2006. We also have the Reserves Act, and we also have some pretty good examples of best practice that have been councils who have reviewed their bylaws themselves in the last few years. So the Freedom Camping Act 2001, it's the legislative framework. It provides that wider umbrella. It defines freedom camping as camping within 200 metres of an area accessible by motor vehicle, mean high water springs, formed road, or one of the Great Walks tracks, in a tent or a motor vehicle. It specifically excludes commercial camping grounds and those traditional holiday parks. It's permitted under the legislation in any local authority council control on any local authority council controlled land, if in a tent or a self-contained motor vehicle. That's what the legislation says. The key is self-contained. If we just ignore the tent bit, because they're obviously not self-contained, it's where most of the interest is in the vehicles. Self-contained, which is defined under the next act we're going to look at. Councils can restrict or prohibit areas, but they have to have a very good reason for doing it. And there's only 3 reasons: to protect the area itself, protect health and safety of those in the area, or protect access to the area. So you can't use things like commercial competition, can't use things like amenities because the neighbours don't like it. This has been tested in the court. Queenstown Lakes District got dragged through a judicial review, and it was made very clear that you have to be able to justify where you prohibit. And reserves areas under these Freedom Camping Act is excluded. They're dealt with by the Reserves Act, which we'll look at. Self-contained motor vehicles legislation and plumbers, gas fitters and drain layers. There's a new regulatory system.
I've just got a question there.
Yes. The various areas are not covered under the Reserves Act. We'll get to the Reserves Act in a minute. So they're managed under the Reserves Act. So that's separate. So there's a new regulatory system. So what happened was in, I think around 2018, people were recognizing that freedom camping was becoming an issue with the byproducts of non-self-contained vehicles, creating havoc in the community. So they formed a working group, and that included representatives from councils, representatives from central government. They put out a position paper, and that was commented on by the public, and the result was the recommendation that the new system come in under a Self-Contained Motor Vehicles Legislation Act in 2023. It introduced a new regulatory system, which provided a definition and assessment framework for self-contained. Being a self-contained vehicle is a motorhome, camper van, or caravan that's equipped to safely manage the occupant's toilet, wastewater, rubbish, and water needs for at least 3 days without requiring external facilities. So they have now a definition of what it is. And then under the Plumbers, Gas Fitters and Drain Layers Act, a new assessment regime came in, where the self-contained certification and warrant. In order to get that now, you can't just stick it on the back. You have to have a formal warrant. It's a green warrant, and it means certain things like you have to have a fixed toilet. The toilet cannot be obscured by any other piece of furniture. It needs to be available at all times, and things around rubbish control, wastewater. So what happens now is that a camper van or a caravan goes to a certified assessment place. They get assessed, and provided all those things are in place, nothing's leaking, everything's available, they will get a warrant. It's not easy. If people are building them themselves, they have to be quite careful. It's quite a stringent regime now.
So, with those, who enforces the warrant compliance?
That's under the Act, the Plumbers and Drain Layers, so it must be under those within that industry.
So, do police enforce it? No, I mean, if you see a vehicle with a warrant, and it's out of date, you know, for a warrant fitness, then the police enforce that on you. The council can also force it on you if you park in a public space. In some areas, I'm asking who enforces this particular one. They don't have it.
That comes in under the bylaw itself. So the council will have, yes, we will have restrictions, enforcement standards in the bylaw.
Okay.
And then it will become an enforcement issue. All that we can do is say you can't be a freedom camper in this space because you do not have a valid warrant.
What about from a big caravan on somebody's property? How does that tie into it?
That's a resource management, TTPP. Oh, are we talking about an action, just a static?
Your private property.
Private property.
Nothing.
No, the issues would be around if there were complaints around the planning and the requirements for, you know, how close to the boundary and things like that.
Okay. Well,
yeah, look, interesting, the warrant thing. So back in the bad old days, you know, you could print off a thing to say you're compliant, rah. I assume they could probably do something similar with a warrant. My question is, has any thought ever been given, and it's probably not for this table, but having a permit associated with a registration number, so it would be an easy lookup. So our compliance people go down, someone's displaying a permit, but you're a bit suspicious, look up the rego number. Does it have a permit?
I think that they do that now. I think
They do
link
that?
them. Yeah.
So there is.
I think there is a link.
There is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure there is. That's why it's now come under that new legislation.
Right.
But I will check that.
Yeah, because that would lend itself to police being able to follow up on that.
I think you'd have trouble getting the police to go in and do it.
Yeah.
You know, just, you know.
What would happen to me if
So it's a lot tighter now, the regime. It's a lot more sure for us when we go out in our enforcement role. And the paperwork has to be there. Yes.
So what are the penalties?
The penalties are what we need to discuss in the bylaw.
Okay, so the penalties are district, rather
There's
than.
there's guidance in the
Yeah,
act,
rather
yeah.
than countrywide,
Yeah.
district, yeah.
Yeah, but there is guidance in the act and in the legislation, other
Yeah.
legislation. And the last act is the Reserves Act, so it regulates all the land that council manages under the Reserves Act. And this overrides all other acts. So even though the Freedom Camping Act says that you can freedom camp on any council controlled land, it exempts reserves. Reserves are separate. So under section 44, the default position is that freedom camping is not permitted. And the issue can only be addressed through resource management, reserve management plans, and only through those plans.
Yeah, because at times on the reserve, e.g. Karamea, people come in and say, this is a reserve. I'm
Yeah,
entitled to
freedom camp on it.
freedom camp.
No,
So in actual fact, under section 44,
they can't.
so we should sort of put that out there to, I'll
Yeah.
have to park it up and remember it, yeah.
Tony.
So in saying that, I know that's the one. And here's sports sector,
They're not a reserve,
not a reserve. They're just
road reserve.
Road reserve.
Yep.
That's managed by us.
That is a valid place unless we prohibited it.
Right. Yeah,
So that's a conversation for another day.
okay. Right.
So homelessness on a reserve? Oh, what does that come
The
under?
reserves, I do not know how the Reserves Act treats homelessness. But I can look at that, but it certainly is exempt under freedom campaign.
Yeah, because we have had cars who are homeless.
Yeah.
Who have parked up for kind of,
But we have moved them on to,
eventually,
well, multiple times as well.
yeah. But whose job is it to move them on?
We administer
Council.
the reserve. We
Yeah,
have- So it's a reserve that we have responsibility for as
okay,
council.
So it's through the council enforcement office.
right.
Yep.
So what about if somebody comes in and goes down the beach where you've got the land down there, whether it's Bylaw, whether it's West Coast Regional Council. So somebody goes and freedom camps on Shingle Beach, which is West Coast Regional Council, I understand. Then West Coast Regional Council is responsible for that.
Yes.
So they have to do all the same sort of things.
It's one of the issues that we have to address in when we're further down the line, when we're looking at specific plans. My role at the moment, I've been looking at the places that we have existing under our current bylaw, and there are a number of them that are not it's not our land.
So usually in that case, there's an MOU with our dock friends to act on their behalf.
Yep.
So that has to be very formalised to make sure that we have the powers to do that on their.
That's formalised now, Simon, or that needs to be.
I think there's gaps currently for
We
here.
haven't.
Definitely, we had those MOUs in place for Westland, particularly some of the larger areas that required it. Lake Canary frontage and all those sort of things, that's all dockland, but a lot of freedom camping in that space, which we manage on their behalf.
I remember, and you probably do, Phil, that we had a BDC and a dock compliance office, particularly around Punakaiki, and they were working together.
Right.
So there must have been some form of agreement with dock.
Yeah. And the other party in all of this is the NZTA as well. So there, some councils have MOUs with them that the council will be responsible for, and they will come into the freedom camping bylaw. We have not done that, and that would tell us that we have a lot more land to look after.
So just on that, Rob, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Phil, after you.
Yeah, so look, we've just been through this process of drafting up our reserve management plans, I can't remember, did we speak to this within those plans?
I wasn't part of that process, but I don't believe we did. We
Oh,
did
that
mention
was-
it in Hector.
Well, we've slipped up if we haven't.
Well, it will be interesting to see what the submissions say to the reserve management plans, whether or not somebody picks that up. But as we know, as we have been told, reserve management plans are living documents. They're meant to be changing as so some councils have done the freedom camping bylaw first, some have done the reserve management plan first. But the two can work together, and that's a legitimate way that we could introduce either a rule that no or yes on these reserves.
So the Motorhome Association contacted us regarding our bylaw review and asked that specific question. So I assume they will be submitting to the resource.
Which may give us the opportunity.
So just so I've got my head around all of this, so if somebody parks on the side of the road.
Yep.
On the coast road, say. Who,
On an NZTA,
so it's NZTA,
if it's on a
reserves.
state highway.
Yeah.
If it's on a street verge in Hector, it's us.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Rosalie,
So it's slightly different, but with, this is freedom camping, but with camping grounds, do they all have to be registered or can, because I see just sort of out country, there's a couple of popped up,
Yeah,
No, they do need to.
that anybody has to be registered if they've got campers, yeah.
If they advertise and actually have a commercial operation as a campground, yes, they need to be registered with council.
Yeah, but if they don't,
Yeah.
and they just have people coming in by word of mouth from campmate or whatever.
yeah, there is
are
a whole,
requirements.
there's a whole movement called the pop over movement, which is basically I in Granity could open up our house, our backyard, and people could come in and pay me $10 a night to park in our rather large gravel area. And technically, I do not know the regulation around that, but they certainly have popped up in a lot of places. Yeah, so we can look at that. Yep. We can look at that. But there must be a way because they seem to operate very easily. Yeah. Yes, there are. Yeah, we'll look at that.
It is very clear, specific guidelines of what constitutes a campground. And, you know, there are quite a stringent amount of rules that go with owning and managing a campground, as you know. So, it could be
Yeah.
quite a complex little, conversation.
I'm sure someone's had a go at it.
Yeah.
I think it was just the movement around that. On land, so I think it was completely self.
Right, yeah.
It's come, stay, and everything with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a place.
Yes, it's, yeah, yeah. And they just advertise through NZC, MCA and those places.
But surely if you're charging for it, like if it's free, if it's private land and it's free,
No, they do charge.
well, and if they're charging, there must be some form of
We
health
can-
and safety regulations anyway.
We can find that out.
Yeah, because even for us around civil defence and stuff, it's, you know, if they're staying in registered campgrounds or even if they're staying in freedom campsites, you do, you know, there are places that you check if you have a,
Yes,
so it is kind of important to.
yeah. So our current bylaw needs updating. Obviously, we've got the new legislation and with self-contained definitions and now an express homelessness exemption, which needs to be in the bylaw. We have best practice examples that we have been looking at from other councils to give us some guidance and lessons learned from judicial reviews. So there's a number of councils that have been taken to judicial review by, in particular, the NZMCA, and they have brought to light little pitfalls. LGNZ's also created a very good template and they have provided a 17-page detailed legal advice on that template. So that's been exciting to read. In addition, our own current prohibited areas, they're not mapped or they're not well justified, and we've learnt from Queenstown Lakes that you have to have pretty good reasons to prohibit. And each of the prohibited or restricted sites needs a reason.
Yeah, I find that extremely interesting because when we went through this in 2018, it must have been, we discussed in length about these prohibited sites and what the justification was.
It's just not recorded in the.
Well, that's a real pity because I know that work was done. Yeah, absolutely.
And we will get the chance to do that now. Yeah. And we also need to map them rather than just describe them.
I thought that was something that was happening in the background. I'm surprised.
I agree. I was looking for the maps because I just assumed they had maps. So that's where we're at with the old bylaw. So you've got a printed copy of this if it helps. We looking at the reason why we would encourage freedom camping. We know Bulla is a destination. We've all been stuck behind a camper van in the gorge, and we've all seen the green sliders in the supermarkets. There's very little specific data on freedom camping in New Zealand. Campermate is an app that people sign up to. It's used by freedom campers. It shows sites that are available or have been recommended, gives reviews and provides supporting information on attractions nearby and things to do. The app has some analytics behind it, and for a fee, councils can get this data. We were hooked into it a number of years ago, but it just wasn't giving us enough to justify the cost. We haven't renewed the subscription for a number of years. It's somewhat limited in that it only recalls those who use the app. So it's only recording when people push on the app, so they're obviously already users of the app. So it is somewhat limited. However, Queenstown Lakes, when they were doing their second review, shared some of the data, and I just found that in one of their presentations. So this.
Rosalie's got a question for you.
Yes.
So just going back to that app.
Yep.
And I know there was one particular area in Karamea that, so one person goes into it and then they put it back on, hi, this is a great spot.
Yeah, they register it, yeah.
And it explodes as to the number of people visiting it.
Yep.
So, and then you've got these non-contained vehicles. How do you go, is there anything in the bylaw that's going to be able to capture them along a riverside, really, along a riverbank that ends up making it a real shithole?
It's all about the enforcement, because non-self-contained shouldn't be stopping on council controlled land.
Can I sort of just?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that's right. And then it's all about enforcement and resources to do that enforcement. So what this is 2024 data, and it shows Bulla sitting quite near the bottom of that particular table for overnight stays. At Freedom Camping sites, it was 1,072. Grey District had 1,702. Westland was 1,262. In contrast, for example, if you look further up the top, Tasman had 3,580 and Huanui had 1,922. They're not huge differences, but it does show where we sit. Queenstown Lakes were obviously the biggest destination for freedom camping.
I've got a question and a point. In my experience, you can have all the bylaws you like, but if you don't enforce them, they're not worth the paper they're written on, and they're not worth the effort. I mean, and we've got to say here, Anecdotally, I think that number is low for Bylaw. I think it's much higher.
Yep.
But let's say it's about right-ish. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Is it worth that much to us to heavily enforce all these things for what would be minimal return on our investment financially wise, but well-being of the community wise? We want to enforce this to make it a good place to come to for everybody else, you know, not just for any money we get back from fines, which would be a bonus. So I see there's a problem though in just discussing this when the mayor asked, you know, who does the side of the road? NZ, whatever, and who does this? Doc. Clearly, we need to have a cohesive, unified enforcement system whereby if it's not within our jurisdiction, we've got a memorandum of understanding with the people whose jurisdiction it is to enforce that as well. Otherwise, you know what, we're just going to waste our time because they'll move down the road and park off the side of the road somewhere away from the river or whatever.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I guess the challenge is that council is doing this because it's law for council to do it. But what about the enforcement, which Dave is talking about? Is that in the legislation? Does council have to enforce it?
So it's not mandatory to go and pick up fines around the district, no. So there's quite a history with freedom camping enforcement. When it was first introduced in 2018, it came with a whole lot of support funding. The original concept was to designate some areas within your district to have toilets, rubbish, and then also enforcement capability, like ambassadors that would go out and do that. That was well funded in the early days. It's fair to say a lot of money was wasted in those days identifying sites that no longer exist anymore, and toilets that were no longer existing anymore, and Hector, for example, removed. But those that funding slowly dissipated. In fact, it's not fully withdrawn. It used to come under the infrastructure fund. Oh, sorry, that infrastructure fund.
Yeah.
So all councils on the West Coast don't add any budget to enforce or support freedom camping. So we do have compliance officers that do enforcement, more education than enforcement. But we have 1.5 officers, right, for the whole length of the bullet.
And for everything, all enforcement.
And they're also doing fly tipping, dog control.
Yeah.
You know, everything else. So that's our capability. If we're talking about, you know, taking on a front line, we would be overrun pretty quickly.
Ray and then Phil.
Awesome. Just want to make the point that the figures might be a bit deceptive, that they're just raw figures. If you were to reinterpret that graph on a per capita basis, the rate of freedom camping in Bulla is pretty high. It's probably comparable per capita to Tasman and hugely more prevalent than, say, Auckland City or Nelson City. So we shouldn't underestimate.
The impact of 1,000 visitors freedom camping is quite big in itself.
It's actually much bigger than a lot of those other areas.
Yeah.
So just a bit of history. In the last couple of summers, freedom camping has been well managed and well behaved. There's been some pockets. Hector's been the hot child, but whenever
So we will go on to that.
okay, so I'm stealing from
No, but it's just, we will go on to all that hotspot stuff. Yeah.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah, no, so I was just going to sort of slightly correct Simon's observation that we'd never, you know, actively put budget aside for it, because we have. But it got to the point, you know, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. The fines will never ever cover the cost of compliance. So it falls back on the ratepayer. Do we really want to increase our rates to pay for this thing, Dave? You know, of course, if we don't, we cop it because we're not enforcing the bylaw, and they bring you up and demand action. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I think it's we just have to softly tread the line best as we can. And with our existing staff. I would be absolutely opposed to seeing in our LTP budget line for bloody freedom camping compliance. I would be very resistant to that.
The complaints don't stack that up either, you know, I think we had 5 last summer, so it's, and some repeats, so it doesn't warrant a whole lot of energy.
And it's also, oh, sorry, but
Yeah, no, I agree, you know, but what I was sort of looking at is, you mentioned before some sort of, it's more about education, right?
Yeah.
We don't go down there with a ticket book and write out a ticket and slap it on the windscreen. What we do is we educate them, which is cool. If we're gonna take that approach, then there seems to me to be that middle line, that balance that we can strike, that would be like making use of community volunteers and all that. So that they can go out there and say, you know what, actually, you're not allowed to camp here. Here's the reasons why, and up the road. Do we make use of volunteers?
That can be more troublesome than it's worth as well, quite frankly. Some people take this as a passion and it's their, they live and breathe it every day.
Kind of a bit of a Nazi.
I wouldn't say that word, but definitely becomes over the top. But there are some ambassadors that do a good job as well, right?
the other thing is that, you know, the more areas that you prohibit, the more you have to enforce. So we should perhaps be looking at the areas where we prohibit and just make sure that those are the ones that are the right ones, and the rest of them, you know, it's like you said, soft touch, lightly over it. But anyway, so because we didn't have a lot on freedom camping, we'll just look at tourism in general. Obviously, you've probably all seen this sort of data before. Employment in the tourist sector obviously relates to everything: accommodation, food services and retail, arts and recreation services and transport. But it's an indication. Freedom campers are tourists. Highlights for Buller District were in 2025, tourism sector employed an average of 322 people in Buller, amounted to 7.2% of Buller's total employment. Employment growth in the tourism sector has been slow. You can see that dip around 2020, and then it has been rising again. Average 2.2% per annum between 2000 and 2025.
You can see the COVID impact.
Yeah, and you see that in everything that we look at. Another indicator perhaps is GDP, what the tourism sector contributes. 30.5 million towards GDP in Buller District in 2025, 3.8% of Buller's economic output, compared with 2.7 in 2000. So that has risen, rather the employment not so much. Growth has averaged 2.8% since 2000, comparing with the average in New Zealand, which is 2.6. So we're keeping up in the GDP area. Tourism has a significant contribution to make in both employment and economic growth. We probably all acknowledge that. It's not the top contender, but it is within the top 10. Freedom camping contributes to visitor numbers and has ongoing impacts and effects. The Freedom Camping Act encourages councils to think positively about freedom camping, providing for it and encouraging opportunities. So if we start from the positive premise that freedom camping is and can be good, remembering freedom camping is about self-contained vehicles, and it's around the other part of it in terms of the main problems are obviously not self-contained vehicles. But if we look at it in a positive way, there are a number of issues that the bylaw itself needs to address. And so this is what we will bring to you in the future around options. So area restrictions. So justifications required to prohibit or restrict. Councils can make bylaws declaring any local authority area to be restricted or prohibited, to protect an area, protect the health and safety of the people who may visit the area, and protect access to the area, So those are as wide as you want to interpret them, but judicial reviews have proved over the last few years that you have to have some pretty good reasons.
Yeah, so who has, put forward the reason would be turned down, like, what
Queenstown Lakes District did, they were about commercial competition, and they were about amenity values of the people who lived next to the areas that were proposed. Both of those were quashed as reasons.
What about the obvious? That they create a sewage.
Well, that's about the health and safety. Yeah,
Yes, so if
That'd
there's
be successful, yeah.
if there's a health and safety, well, I
in a
mean,
particular area.
yeah, so is that class as a health and safety issue?
It can, that's the argument that we can build
Yeah,
if we need to.
yeah,
So, it would be, so the issues that will come up with prohibited. Should self-contained vehicles be prohibited in any areas? So are there council controlled sites which should be on the list for no freedom camping at all? And we're talking about prohibited for self-contained as well. Only for self-contained should be prohibited. The current bylaw has those 15 sites, which were obviously looked into a lot more than have come out in the bylaw itself. In addition to listing all of the cemeteries in the district, which is probably common sense. Yes. Oh,
The 15 sites, just
Yes.
looking at them, or are you gonna go?
we're gonna see
Okay,
them in a
all right.
minute. Yep.
Okay, good.
If we don't prohibit, if we do want to prohibit areas, do we stick with the specific sites approach or extend it to larger areas? So some examples have put whole villages or towns. So they've said the 50K zone on the eastern side to the 50K zone on the west, to the 100K zone on the western side. They have identified what in our case would be something like hectare or Waimangarawa. They and that's on the basis of that they don't have the facilities, they have grass verges, they don't want people to mess around with the actual infrastructure or lack of it in those small communities. But again, you couldn't say it's because the people don't want them there. You have to have a good reason, one of the reasons. But we do need plans and maps. And the question around, sorry, yes.
It's just that when we're banning areas, I think we should have balance in that.
Yep.
Should be some areas that where we accommodate them.
Yes, yeah.
Because it means more to the economy than just tourism. And I think back to, family patch at Charleston. Parents used to rent it out. And between two people from Christchurch that rented it, they brought 3 property owners into this district.
Yeah.
Okay, they came to the area, liked it, and eventually retired here. Then the son retired here, who eventually worked for council and managed Old Town for a time.
Right. Yep.
So there were 3 purchases of properties that came out of
Yes.
tourism.
Long term, yeah. No, they're prohibited. We'll get to the list.
People are dying to book into that location.
Just to, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to follow on Paul's comment, the original reason for councils to identify sites where you could freedom camp was to try and corral them into one area rather than people driving down, hiding down roads that were prohibited. So that was the whole concept, and facilities that could go with it. So there are some sites we do have as restricted.
And just keeping in mind that we're again just talking about BDC land. Please.
Okay, look, I was just going to ask a question about the Motorhome Association. Do we have an ongoing relationship with them? Do we encourage them to submit? Because obviously, if we're talking about self-policing,
Yep.
they play a pivotal role.
They are
And
very,
by and large, seem
strict.
to be a very responsible organisation.
They're very strict in their own behaviour.
Yeah, so we already reached out to them. We are going to probably have a conversation with them before we even bring a draft to council, so that we understand if there's any nuances that they seem as difficult, just to make sure we cover that before we even come to us.
But we'll also talk to some other people.
Phil,
Yeah, to the point, aren't we recognised as a motorhome friendly
Yes.
district?
Yep.
Because of our close cooperation with,
Yes.
we think about the last big thing they had up in Reefton. They're organising another one now. I forget how many vans, 400 vans, yeah.
Did you? Yep.
Of course, it was the Motor Caravan Association that wrote the parameters for the self-containment.
Yes.
They issued their own certificates for members that you had to be self-contained to be in their own parks. And basically the government has adopted what they'd refined over a number of years as to the number of, as you mentioned earlier, the toilet, what sort of area it's got to be and how many people can be in the camper for the side of it.
Yeah. We're definitely talking to them as a stakeholder, but we will also make sure that we're talking to other people who have an interest, such as the police. They always have an interest in this sort of thing. And probably we'll talk to Doc as well as another interested party. And we'll bring back to you what input they have. So, and here's the dreaded list. So this is the list that we have at the moment. What in my first go through it, what I have noticed is that some of the land isn't BDC controlled. It sort of goes into what like hydro land, which is actually Lynn's looks after that. There are the issues around Constant Bay, for example, and Joyce Bay. We need to be a bit more specific around those. And there's also some reserve land, like it says Carter's Beach. Reality is it doesn't need to be there because it's not allowed under the Reserves Act, unless the management plan says it is. So the work is underway at the moment of mapping areas for council consideration as part of the review, and that would be the subject of the next workshop we bring to you. And obviously in the meantime, if you have suggestions, if you have areas that you've noticed have had problems, then probably if you can get those to us, that would be helpful, and we can map those and see who owns the land and whether or not we can have any control over it.
So I just need clarification on this F. Both north and south adjacent parking areas of the eastern end of the Buller Bridge.
Yeah, so that's where they down at the end of where we have the Kawatiri Trail.
So what's to stop somebody pulling up in the main road here, parking on the side of the road?
You're talking about off the state highway or on the state highway?
Within
Buller?
Within Westport, within Reefton.
Yeah.
I see Reefton.
Really?
Yeah.
Nothing. No, because the legislation says
within
200 metres of a road, or
So they can pull up on the council land out the front, Freedom Camp.
I believe they can.
Likewise, I think the car park at MBS has been quite full of camper vans as well. Yeah. Okay.
So just a question, like, when you go back to the areas on the Buller Bridge, either side of the Buller Bridge, are they not reserve land?
No, I believe, I would have to look it up, but I believe it's road reserve.
So if you're a visitor coming here, because for me, if we're saying you can't park on reserves, Carter's Beach doesn't need to be there, but how does anyone differentiate what's a reserve and what's not a reserve? And so you kind of have to have something.
So then it comes back to, are we, that's about the education, that's about having the, links on the web page, all of those things. Places that obviously look like you could park, but you shouldn't because it's a reserve, we should be putting some signage up there.
Mm.
But that all comes around to that education and information. NZCMA will be very open to us giving them all that information.
So,
and
so
access.
maybe what we should be doing is when we do the map, we just have a QR code on those areas that says whatever, no freedom camping, but please see, scan here for sites.
This is the next one that you might like.
Okay.
Roman, what about that area down by the Buller Bridge where they're putting that pipe in? Is that council reserve at all in any way, shape or form?
I think it might be road reserve and I think part of it is NZTA, but I don't know, but I
okay.
can look that up for you.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to be going through this research for the company and identify those sites. But we've obviously got these, I don't know how many, 15 odd sites now. There may be more that we bring to the surface as we go through.
Well, there may be less. It may be that we come up with less, but we're able to police them better or encourage people a bit more. Yeah.
Can I just throw in there, it's a pity that hasn't been documented because we spent a lot of time justifying these.
I will try and find it. Yeah.
I mean, some are very obvious, the tip heads, health and safety, you can't be. Camping
Either
out
side,
there,
yeah.
very self-evident. And I know that this one around the bridge was created a lot of angst because it was quite popular. People would come off the bridge, and
Down by the Buller Bridge.
yeah.
Very inviting.
Yeah,
There were a lot of
absolutely.
submissions, like I
Sorry?
think we had a lot of
Yeah.
submissions
Yeah.
from people
Yeah.
around those sites and then why. So it'd be interesting to find that information.
One of the big things around, being in the emergency management office at the time of one of the floods, it was very much on people's mind, where are the freedom campers, especially the October flood? Where are they at the moment? So we need to go down and we need to find and see if they're there.
You've just hit exactly on one of the reasons that we included in prohibited areas, health and safety,
Yeah.
flash flood.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is one of that's a totally justifiable health and safety issue.
All the streets of West.
So the next one we look at is restricted. This is a bit of a misnomer. It actually, when it says restricted, it's actually where you would encourage people. That's how we've used it, but the language in the legislation is restricted. So that's the area where you put conditions on. So they tend to be the more popular areas. And then the next slide we'll talk about sort of conditions that we might put on them. But for example, would you want to encourage non-self-contained in areas that have public toilets available? Is that something we want to know? Rosalie's saying no. This will make those sites more popular. And then you need some rules around them to allow for turnover. But yeah, the question is, as a district, is that what we want? Do we want to have some areas that have existing facilities on council-owned land where we could say, we're not opposed to you coming, but you need to go here if you're not self-contained.
Like the beach facility down the road here.
Yeah.
Which got toilets and
Yeah.
showers and all that barbecue.
This is just the whole corralling type approach where you have in one area where they have facilities to use.
I think it's a good approach using a carrot and a stick.
The challenge that councillors will face is there will be opposition for people putting those areas in place because of other reasons.
Yeah.
That one down at the North Beach that Dave's referring to, is that dock or West Coast Regional? It's PDC, is it?
Oh, part of it is, not all of it. Yeah, part of it is. So that, that's something that we will bring you options around that. The other, the second issue is around time restrictions. So this allows, in the popular spaces, this allows for turnover. It's used to ensure that popular sites aren't monopolised by campers who want to spend 2 weeks there free of charge, even if they are self-contained. Some councils have stay restrictions over the entire district. And in fact, our existing bylaw says that apart from prohibited areas, Self-contained freedom camping at any one location or within 500 meters of that location is limited to no more than 3 consecutive days and no more than 10 days per calendar month. It's quite an enforcement nightmare, that one, if it's across the whole district. So that, but at the, some councils still do that. Great, has just done this, and they've got a restriction over, time restrictions over their entire district.
Can I just ask, what's the rationale behind the time? So they don't camp there for.
So they don't stay there.
So what's wrong with that? If we are okay with the idea of freedom camping with large, why does putting the duration on it? And I'm not saying it's not a good reason, but maybe we want to look at why it's there so we can more clearly understand what's a reasonable time frame.
And the thing is that it's actually more meaningful if it's a popular spot where you're actually trying to encourage turnover and people, you don't want people monopolizing an area. Like you can have a group of people come to a popular spot, they might stay there for a month together. That's not really fair on the other people who.
Like North Beach has only got so many booths, right?
Yeah.
And it is a popular spot. People, you have a crew on caravan park there tomorrow.
Yeah.
If it was there for a whole year.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just.
So the idea is that we encourage them to these spots, they stay at certain levels, right?
Yeah.
If they want to stay at this, they move on to.
They go to another spot and then within the same period of time and come back.
Yeah.
We'll do the route.
So, yeah, that's probably one of the more enforceable ones if it's limited. The other one,
we've used for the Carter's Beach. Move them on.
the other one is arrival and departure times. Having people arrive and then go away for the day and then come back. I'm not sure how that's quite hard to enforce. I also know, due to 2 big sisters who have caravans and camper vans, that they like to get to their sites by about 4 o'clock. That's the time when you want to set up before dark, and you don't want to be messing around in the dark when you park. So we can look at those, see if there's any other examples. And the third issue is around updates that we will present you with for consideration. So we'll update those definitions, provision for exceptions to camping in prohibited areas. That's a thing that is provided for in the Act. So it's when you make an application to go to an area that's prohibited, you can make an application for an event. You can do something like that. You have to come through the chief executive to get an exemption. Everybody has those exemptions and they just allow a little bit of flexibility.
So I'm just thinking, Tony, with your rhythm and food thing that you're running out of Waimanga, I mean, see that you're gearing up for another one of those too. So if you want to encourage a whole lot of campers out to that area, that's a reserve there, isn't it?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah. So there's no.
Is there like, is there any exception?
I need to look at that. So I'll look at Reserves Act, see if we can have exemption. Yeah. Yeah. Events, an event. Yeah.
Just strikes me, Tony, it might be another string in
Actually,
your
they
bow in
used to have
terms
the
of
dog show.
making the provision.
Carter's
for
Beach, and
people
they
to
would
come there.
stay on camper vans
They
for
do.
that weekend, but now it's not there anymore, it's at the motor camp, so it doesn't matter, but it's a good thing to
Right.
find
Yeah,
out.
no, it's a good thing to
Yeah.
find out. Yep. Mhm.
Okay.
Right, that's what,
Yes, but only for lawful purposes.
Group, desperately trying to.
Sorry.
hold it.
You can't lease it out to grow
Because of
something
the-
that's not
the law
lawful.
from-
Sure.
So, and the last things are around infringement and offences, penalties. As I said, the LGNZ template is very good, and there's the best practice examples. And the last one is about it's the $1 million question. The best approach is obviously education advice first, like we were talking about. You publicize it, you make sure you go with your comms and everybody's brought on board early. After adoption, there are opportunities for resources to be developed, made available at the usual locations on the website, through our comms outlets, media, radio, and keeping that out over perhaps busy periods as well, not just forgetting about it once we've adopted it, but making sure that in summertime we are, at doing the things that don't cost us a lot of money.
Do we have the opportunity, BDC, to go on that Camp Promote site, or the same sort of logins that the campers hook into?
I believe, I mean, anybody can do it. I believe there may be a fee. Yeah. The information in that form is not useful to us as a council, but it's useful for you if you want to look at Karamea and go, what's being advertised?
Yeah, but I was thinking about us putting messages through that to say, camping's not permitted here, but it is.
I don't think it's
here.
that sort of ad.
No, just give you information about where to find stuff, and then in turn, it will get, because it's not showing up, obviously, those places don't have those.
Yeah.
Things like it.
There have been occasions where we've written to Campermate where they've designated a site which is restricted or which is actually prohibited. So then they've removed them. So you have to be quite onto it and proactive on it.
Yeah.
There's sites, even the Motor Caravan Association's got its own maps, which has where you can freedom camp and where the facilities are. And if there are maps of these banned sites on there, it would automatically flag people that use the likes of Rankers is another one, regularly used. So if the banned sites were flagged on there, these people are using that app and they'd see not let park here. No curiosity.
So hooking into all those existing media and sites. And we've already really talked about the whole enforcement resources, and some of you were around during that 2018, 2019. But I can tell you that last year, we had our own, our single compliance officer getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning, driving around campsites to see who was there, who wasn't. She was checking hotspots and warrants before the campers left in the morning. But that is really the crux of the issue.
So we'll still do those checks. Usually we have a staff member based in Reefton that can do the checks there quite easily. But we will also we are so popular sites like Fox River, at a Hector, and obviously North Beach, etc., that we do checks on quite regularly. The remote ones, Karamea is pretty hard to get to and do a turnaround and come back on the same day.
Can I ask, the compliance officer, can he or she do it instant fine?
Depends what the bylaw says, but it's normally a warning.
Yeah, well, these are transient people, what's the point of a warning?
They can fine, depending on the approach of the individual concerned, they can fine.
Yes, so if they got a self-case up.
Yep, yes.
They clearly know the rules, there's no rules around freedom camping,
Yep.
sign saying only self-contained with a figure,
Yep.
they're camping there. Surely the compliance officer could do it in instant on-spot fine.
Like a parking enforcement.
Power, I mean, we shouldn't be infusing that into.
Enforcement,
So can I just raise an interesting point that, you can issue a notice of fine.
Yep.
And they just leave the country. Are they going to pay it? 90% of the cases they don't. You can't get cash off them. Sorry, we haven't got any cash.
Yeah.
And so you issue a notice of fine. But the chances of having it paid is slim.
We'll have to dispatch it to Hawaii or Fiji to pick it up for.
I mean, Doc had this whole issue when they were.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm hearing
Yeah.
you say.
Guys, we've got to wrap it up now. We've got another tight schedule starting at 3, so 5 to now.
future, so we're in this stage now, we just wanted to engage you early so you knew what was coming up and get your ideas. We'll do evaluation of areas, we'll bring it back. Then there will be a draft in consultation. It's no way it's gonna be September, but it might be October. And report to include all the issues and options. Then there'll be consultation, consideration of submissions and a final adoption.
Great, thanks, Bronwyn. Simon, we got 5 minutes and then we'll go into our next workshop.
Good job, Ron.
Yeah.